Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Of it. David Crow, limited government activist, though, is next with a tax farce update. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. 870-275-9799. That is the telephone number if you would like to contribute to the program. That's 870-275-9799. Joining us now, we have on the phone Mr. David Crow, the chairman of the Faulkner County Tea Party. David, welcome back to the program, sir.
Hey, Paul, glad to be with you. This is an exciting day and a lot of things going on down at the Capitol, and a lot of good information floating around. I'm glad that you read that letter from, Tim Griffin about to that task force.
Yeah,
that's a powerful message.
Yeah, it's like a shot off the bow in a way. I mean, lieutenant governors in Arkansas traditionally they do use their pulpit, to go around and advocate for things, and so a lot of times they've been successful at it. I mean, it may be things that I don't like, but if you look at like Bill Halter, he went around talking about how we had to have the scholarship lottery, and guess what? Now we have the lottery.
Exactly.
And so you would hope that Tim's words would be meaningful to some of these folks on the committee. But my fear is, David, and you feel free to respond to that, I think some of what he says in that letter is in direct contradiction to the feelings of Governor Hutchinson on what this task force is supposed to do. Do you think I'm wrong on that?
No, I think you're perfectly right. I think that that's the purpose of Tim's letter was to set the stage, broaden their focus on a variety of things. We are, in my letter that I put out, I noted that our governor and the legislative leaders are thinking that we do not have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem. And it's just crazy to think that they're going to go in and attempt to reform the tax structure and to maintain a spending binge that they've been on for years. And Tim's, like you said, was a shot across the bow. And you would hope to think that they would take everything into consideration and look at all of that.
Yeah.
And to not look at everything is a huge mistake.
I agree. And, the difference there is, it's one thing to not it's one thing to look at everything. They could choose to look at everything and then not do anything that's actually relevant, to what our goals are. What was the feeling on the ground down there at the Marble Palace? You guys were in the Mac building, the cameraless, streamingless Mac building, correct?
That is so true. And, I tell you what, the suits were out in force. They populated the whole room. We had a contingent of about, I think, Janet, what was it, about 8 to 10 people? And we were all wearing our badges, cut spending, reduce taxes. And we were there taking notes, et cetera. However, it was one of those meetings that, you've been to many, where after about an hour or so, you start looking around and yawning and wondering what's next. But they did a lot of procedural things today where the BLR, or I think I call that the Bureau of Legislative Research, came in and shared a number of things about what research they had done in the past or received and how many reforms that had occurred since the 90s, and which were very, very, very few, even though they had a ton of reports. And then they just did some procedural things. I think the most telling comment of the day was from Larry T. And he said, we need professional help. And with that, I think everybody cracked up. And the question was it therapy or counseling? And
so it was a joke. But it was a joke. Well, he wasn't referencing consultants then.
Do what now?
It was a joke because I saw that was reported on Twitter that he wasn't referencing consultants then.
No, they were actually getting ready to go into the RFP, which was what kind of consulting group were they going to employ to assist them in gathering and pull together on a nonpartisan basis data so that they could string out the information and look at it and determine what are the best places for them to attempt to reform the overall tax structure. And one of the things they did look at that was very interesting was the number of exemptions that are offered to the various groups around the state, whether manufacturing or whether it's individual groups or not-for-profits and the like, and the numbers were literally up in the billions of dollars.
Wow. Yeah, we got your cut. Yeah. We got your cut spending, reduced taxes button. I got a photo of that. I saw that on Twitter. That's now up at paulharrell.com for people to see. How many of y'all, were there wearing those buttons? I mean, obviously the suits outnumbered you guys, I'm sure, right?
Oh, yeah, by far. I think there were about 8 to 10 of us on 2 or 3 different rows. And but it was a good group of people. So we're hoping to be able to have a group of people down there each time they meet. They gave us the schedule over the next 3 months. And we anticipate that we're going to have somebody there. But what they're going to be going through over the next 3 months is looking at more and more data and also making a decision about their consultant that they're going to employ to assist them in this process.
Okay. Talk to me about your numbers. We went over them Friday. We went over them some more yesterday. What inspired you to actually dive into these numbers and, discover that Arkansas has such a large government? I mean, whether you're looking at the amount of money we spend per person here in Arkansas or we're looking at the amount of government employees, I mean, what inspired you to actually dig into these numbers, David Crow?
Well, I was, during the legislative session, we were down there and we were talking about, originally we went into the session thinking that they were going to cut taxes by $100 to $200 million. Next thing we know, that the governor and the legislature is trying to propose another almost $400 million this year. Also, that they've increased spending by another $66 million this year, and it just continues to grow government, the path that they're on, whether it's increased spending or increased taxes. And so I read a piece by Gene McVeigh, which laid out some numbers, and it just, in our group, has decided that we're going to take a position on issues, lower taxes, less spending, et cetera. So I was inspired by that, and the fact that when I heard Senator Dismang say that we don't have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem, and I was just sort of shocked by that comment. Sent him a text and tweet, and we went back and forth, and then with a few days later, I heard the same thing come out of Governor Hutchinson's mouth, that we don't have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem. And with that, it was like, okay, we're going to pull together numbers. I am really going to come on strong, and I'm just going to pound the table about these numbers. We overspend in the report that you read that we wrote, and found that we're spending so much more than the surrounding states, the comparable states around the country, the average of what the nation is by anywhere from 37 to 45%. We spend like folks that actually have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of money, and we continue to overspend. And our governor and the leaders of the legislature seem to think that we need to have more taxes, which is a huge mistake.
Do you think there's any correlation with your numbers and poverty in Arkansas? That just dawned on me. I mean, is it because, could the size of government actually perpetuate, and I think it does, but does it perpetuate, dependency and poverty?
No doubt. But I can imagine this. What if we had, let's say, a 30% decrease in our taxes? How positive an event that would be for the state of Arkansas. And it, not only a small business would have more jobs, individuals would have more money in their pocket, the cash would begin to flow, and people in poverty or in a situation where they were unable to find a job might find a job, and therefore help them to get out of that poverty cycle that they're in right now. So, yeah, I think it contributes greatly to that.
Yeah, I really do. So let's look at this. In 2015, now where did you pull these numbers from? It's a credible website.
Yeah, I went to ballot. Let's see where it is. Ballotpedia.org and looked at the total state government expenditures.
Okay.
And the folks that provided the information to them were the National Association of State Budget Officers, and it has a list of everybody that from every state in the union that provided this information. Then I went to the governing.gov, and it gave me all the information on people. and how many people work in state government, whether it's in the just the administration side of the government or the total numbers of people working in education. So those numbers were staggering as well, where we actually employ significantly more people than the surrounding area. And then if we just went to the average of what the surrounding states employed, we're actually about 14,000 people overemployed in the state government if you do comparison within the states around Arkansas.
14,000?
Those numbers are staggering.
14,000?
Yeah, 14,000 people. Well, the governor and his staff, they pound their chest about, hey, we cut back 1,000 people over the last 2.5 years. What more do you ask? Well, we're 14,000 overemployed. So at this rate of 1,000 people in 2.5 years, guess how many years it's going to get you to get to the norm?
God.
And the norm would then be 35 years. It's going to take 35 years at the rate of reduction of staff that the government spent that's been on, and it's going to take them 35 years to get to the norm. I mean, this is just crazy. These numbers were just staggering when I saw them.
It's taken a long time to get over the, the bureaucratic nightmare that the Clintons built, and some Democrats before them. I mean, that's really what we're facing here, and that needs to definitely be said. $7,935 per capita is what we spend on each person here in Arkansas for the government to be at its current size. And that is versus contiguous states, you write, that spend on average $5,456 per person. That's just insane. That's just absolutely insane.
We employ 45% more. We spend 45% more than the average of the states around us. And it's just, and no matter if you look at the average of the United States, we spend 38% more than the average of all the states in the Union. 38.5% more than the contiguous states, less Texas, because it's so large, and then 37.5% more than the comparable states around the country. And that's Oklahoma, Utah, Connecticut, Iowa, Kansas, Mississippi, and Nevada.
And they all have populations. They all have populations of a million, within a million of Arkansas.
That's correct. That's correct. So even the states that are just about like us, we spend 37% more than they do. So we definitely have a spending problem. We definitely have a spending problem. We do not have a revenue problem. And in our state, if you can cut the spending side of it, those dollars that come in via the revenue can be given back to the people. And who amongst all of your people that are listening to this radio, which one of y'all would turn down a 37% reduction in your taxes? I would tend to think that there's not one hand been raised out there. Everybody would love to see another 37% be put in their pockets.
Yeah, and
I would.
I mean, me too. And the thing is, I'm sure there are government employees listening, or bureaucrats listening, or politicians listening that say, this is just simply unreasonable. That it just terrifies them. And there are some great government employees. We talked to one the other day. But, at issue here is, well, how are other states surviving? Like, how are they surviving? And if you look at these other states, most of them are thriving compared to us. And so, and so the idea, is it because we have such a larger government than everybody else? And I would say the answer is yes. But, I mean, shouldn't we at least explore that? Shouldn't that be part of the Tax Farce's mission? I think it should be. Right.
Paul, I was in human resources, and one of the things that we did over the number of years, I was in for 30 years in that job, and there were times that we had to reduce the size of the workforce to save the business. And in doing so, we found that our productivity went up with the remaining staff. We've had 5%, 10%. At one time, I had a 20% reduction in staff, and it was amazing, and corresponded with one of our clerks up here in Conway that worked with county government. She made the comment that she cut her staff by 25% over the last 6 months, 5 months since she's been there, through retirement and normal attrition. And she says the individuals there are more excited about their job than they have ever been, and all of them have commented on that. And that's what we found out when we had reductions in force, that oftentimes You go through that first period of time where it was difficult, but a lot of the people that left the company found better work. A lot of the people that remained were more active and more proactive and felt better about their job and were more productive in what they were doing. So it's just something that the state ought to get engaged in, and they need to be doing more than just doing reducing workforce by 1,000 people over a 2.5-year period.
Yeah, and Tim Griffin talks about, you got to do more than revenue-neutral tax cuts. You just can't do these revenue-neutral tax cuts. And these numbers back that up, and it's really going to be crunch time. It's crunch time for these guys. This is where Republicans are either going to actually implement, what they say they believe in or not. And I have a feeling no one hates this more than I do, that it all kind of comes back to Medicaid expansion. But when they made that deal, they have now sentenced us and put us on a path to where we have so much dependency and we owe more and more money that they have every incentive to raise our taxes and less and less of an incentive to lower them. And that's what we're battling here. We're battling the game of incentives to keep government big versus allow it to shrink.
Well, Paul, get this. Most of these numbers that I wrote in my article and were not impacted at that point in time by the significant numbers that we're paying out on the Medicaid expansion.
True.
We're now spending nationwide $1.8 million in the state of Arkansas for Medicaid expansion. $1.8 billion. $1.8 billion. We're going to have to pay 5% of that. Think about that number. And that number is going to hit us in the face. What is this coming year or right now this next?
Yeah, the bill comes due this July.
Yeah, and just think about that number getting hit with that number and what that's going to do to our spending. It's just going to ratchet it up by $500 million again, if not more. I mean, it is staggering what's gone on, and this governor has chosen to install ASA Care, and it is just another expansion of Medicaid expansion and Obamacare in the state of Arkansas. And it's just going to have a stranglehold on us. And
it makes it difficult. I mean, not leading us out of this, it makes it difficult on the Senate, up in D.C., because we have all this dependency and nobody wants to do the hard thing and tell people, hey, you're not entitled to any of this if you're able to work. And so it makes it harder on that. And then what else has it done? It's made it harder for us to actually see the conservative reforms that Arkansas obviously desperately needs when you compare us to the surrounding states. David Crow, chairman of the Faulkner County Tea Party. Your information is fantastic. I appreciate the report on the tax farce that met earlier today from the Marble Palace, and can't wait to do it again soon, okay?
Thank you, Paul. Enjoyed it.
Thank you. David Crow, everybody. Folks, we got to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.